Hello everyone, welcome to the Yogascapes in Japan podcast series. My name is Patrick McCartney. Yogascapes in Japan is a 2-year project funded by the Japanese Society for the Promotion of Science and is hosted by the Graduate School of Global Environmental Studies at Kyoto University, Japan. The aim of this project is to understand and document the popularity and consumption of global yoga within the Japanese cultural setting. In this episode, Dr. Patrick McCartney is presenting at the Religious Studies Graduate Student Society Symposium at the University of Alberta.
All right, thank you very much for coming. I'm going to talk about consuming yoga as basically a product. So it's kind of fitting this talk, this conference, and so it's really, I'm looking forward to having some chance at the end of the talk to answer some questions. So please keep them in mind. So I'm in Kyoto and been there for about 18 months. What I'm trying to do is essentially explore the consumption of global yoga within the Japanese context. So this is my website, yogascapesinjapan.com. You can check it out. I've got a bunch of stuff on there, including the project I'm moving towards, as this one fast finishes in November. So what I'm interested in is the life cycle of global yoga and trying to map it and look at the different stage in industry life cycles. And so I would argue that global yoga generally is in this mature, if not saturated phase of its life cycle. So however long that trajectory will keep growing is really anyone's guess, and that's why you get, like, literally, I like puns, saturation, I couldn't help but find. So this was an event in Kyoto at the start of the year in the aquarium near the train museum, which was awesome. If you come to Kyoto, make sure you go to the train museum. So yeah, they had this guy playing a synth and he was on a bass, and right in front of one of the big tanks, they had a kind of yoga class, which is really nice. So this is the stuff I'm interested in, how yoga, these hybrid, transcultural kind of things happen. And Kyoto has become a really interesting place, in Kansai generally, to look at tourism. So if you don't know how to read some Japanese, this is yoga. Or you've got yoga. So the Sanskritists know that the vowel in that O vowel in Sanskrit, you hold it for 2 counts. So this becomes a really important way of branding yourself as a yoga teacher, as a producer of yoga lifestyles, and as a consumer, because this bottom one is more Sanskritic, it's more traditional, more authentic, right? So you'll find people making a conscious choice. Like who are their consumers in that way? It can be based on something as simple as a straight line. So I'll get on with it. What I'm going to talk about is these things, not necessarily in this order. This is more just kind of general topics. So I become interested in Yogaland, which I'll explain a bit about, and decolonising yoga, or I like to think about it, post-colonizing yoga, and I'll explain a bit about that. And explore this idea of the shadowlands of yoga. So just kind of in a cautionary tale of trying to untangle myself, you can say, from getting deeply involved in yoga since being a child and becoming a yoga teacher and working to market myself in a very competitive, heterodox, regulated industry is part of what I'm working on today, which kind of then leads into this idea of unlikely alliances and strategic syncretism. So how people can end up being in a very distinct social world, but that porous boundary between other social worlds then lends this commensality that can occur. So you could be lending yourself your tacit, unwitting distance de facto, but now support to something that you have no idea actually even exists, just because you're sharing in these kind of similar signs, similar identities and practices in some way. So So that's some of the stuff I'm interested in. So Yogaland. Yogaland, if you've not heard this term before, it's quite ubiquitous and it can be used as a in a pejorative sense, but also with affection. So it could be referring to someone's discrete yoga tribe, or a pan-global unified tribal network of yogis, or it could be also used to signify the hyper-commodification of yoga in that sense. So, but what I'm interested in is kind of basically you can think of the biography of yoga in Sanskrit in Branding India. I think this really sums up what I'm most curious about. So how does yoga and how does Sanskrit, how do they work together in this kind of waves of sacralization and desacralization in terms of how they come together to create demand for something? So what is the demand that's being created? Well, there's lots of things, and I'll try and talk about some of them today. But one of the things I've been working on particularly more recently, or in a more focused way, is on tourism. So I'm interested in yoga tourism. And it makes up a huge amount of the world's GDP. It also makes up a huge amount of the carbon footprint. Roughly around 8-10% of the global carbon footprint is linked to the carbon supply chain of tourism. And so we have now quite a big issue with mass tourism and over-tourism. So, in Venice with the massive, not tankers, but what do we call them? Everyone goes on cruise ships, right, and Barcelona and Kyoto. In Japanese, there's a term, kengo kogai, which means like tourism pollution. So this is a really big issue. And so wellness, apparently, is going to be good for ourselves, but it's also going to help with over-tourism. And there's kind of interesting things in how that might work and might not work. And that's really where I've come to kind of embed myself into the future, is look at these yoga tourism, spiritual tourism, wellness tourism, and how they map onto each other. So that kind of sums me up. And which has led me, so this is what I'm going to Penn State next week to talk about. So neoliberalism in yoga, and the coercion, the haptic logics of being coerced to perform an embodied yogic lifestyle as something that sets you apart. You wrap the yoga mat under your arm and you walk out onto the street, and you're kind of going into the cosmopolitan urban utopia, but at the same time, especially in Japan, there seems to be the sense of connecting to a pan-Asian spirit. So it's as you stretch on the mat, it's kind of like this metaphysical, Arabian Nights flying carpet in some way. At least that's how I kind of look at it sometimes. So maybe you know about the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. There are 17 goals, 179 kind of then sub-things. One of the goals is to do with sustainable development and tourism. So this is the one I'm kind of focusing on the most. And you find all these ideas about transforming yourself and becoming more productive through various wellness packages. But it's a huge industry. We're talking $4.3 trillion, and its average annual growth rate is like 8%. I mean, there's huge money to be made in wellness tourism. So, and yoga obviously plays, you have the Ayurveda, you have the spa and wellness stuff, you have the fitness, you have the meditation, the mindfulness, and so there's a lot to it. So in Yogaland, there's this idea, and kind of perverse way, I like to read the biographies of yoga teachers on their websites. It's really interesting, the kind of the narrative style that you find. There's always, I was doing some crappy job that I hated in a cubicle, and then I became a yoga teacher, and now I just travel the world and share the love, kind of thing. I mean, this is basically the kind of narrative that you find. Not to take anything away from it, if people find whatever that spark is. That's awesome, but it's doing discourse analysis and sentiment analysis of these things, I find it really interesting to look at them. So this is basically what my project is that I'm currently looking for funding to do. So it's about well-being, and if you want to know more about it, it's on my website under the next project. So I actually have I think it's well-developed idea, and there's lots of links, and you could spend half a day there probably if you had nothing better to do. So in terms of the wellness and coming to like this idea of Hindu supremacists indoctrinating global yoga consumers, hopefully won't have to get my tinfoil hat out. But there's some really interesting links, particularly between Kyoto and Varanasi, but also between Japan and India. I mean, obviously you have the historical spread of Buddhism across Asia. And it's somewhere around like the 8th century, first decade of the 8th century, as far as I'm aware, the term yoga, not in a modern postural stretchy yoga, but just yoga as part of like Tantric Buddhism coming into Japan was around the start of the 9th century. So yeah, yoga as a word has been in Japan for quite some time, but so yeah, there's this idea of creating smart heritage cities, and that basically means free Wi-Fi, as far as I can tell. And so in Varanasi, which is the constituents' political seat that Narendra Modi, the current Prime Minister, has, they've been just smashing down old temples as part of this like redevelopment thing to widen the road so pilgrims can get down to Manikarnika Ghat quicker. And this is a big problem. Is that development, cultural heritage management, all these things come into play. So there's a roadmap to transcendence, and what this Vakyo is actually a portmanteau of Varanasi and Kyoto, right? So it's about creating kind of pilgrimage routes, in a sense, which there already are. But so what's happening is, so you have India, all these kind of Buddhist historical places across to Japan and Cambodia, Malaysia, Nepal, China, Indonesia. So the Cambodia one is interesting. I'll come back to that in a second. But so this is the Trans-Asian Buddhist Circuit, I think is what it's short for. Trans-Asian Buddhist Circuit. So there's all these things going on. So it brings together like religion, tourism, sustainability, just general United Nations stuff, and it all kind of looks fantastic, but as far as I can tell, there's not much happening on the ground. And this is where you end up. This is where the Journal of Yoga Studies launch was in Kyoto, just near Kyoto University, in this Shimagamo Villa. I almost broke this window pane. I went to move back as someone walked past and my seat got stuck, and it's this heritage listed villa and the whole pane just... Yeah, that's me. I'm that guy. But so this was recently... I'm working on some stuff to do with the temple. You can do temple yoga in Japan. So there's this really curious way in which temples are adding on yoga as a revenue stream in some ways. People don't go to temples so much in Japan, so they're always fighting in different ways to create distinction, right, in a sense. And so this is one that the Kyoto Tourism Board has actively tried. So they did a trial run where it was a free event and you could go along, and this is Sandra. She did some yoga classes in English, and then you went for a walk to Shimagamo Jinjo, which is one of the main popular tourist destinations, which is just on just like a 5-minute walk away. So yeah, there's these curious crossovers of yoga, and they kind of boil down to this re-enchanting. It's kind of neo-Orientalism in a sense, the marketing. That Asia is mystical and magical, and you see the same stuff in the Indian tourism marketing and the Japanese tourism stuff. So it's a curious thing. But coming back to Cambodia, so here's Angkor Wat, the main part of it in Siem Reap. And what's happening is, I mean, you have the Hindu nationalists that want to create a Hindu nation. They want to remove the secular component of the preamble and the constitution. You've got people, there's a very heterogeneous group of Hindu supremacists, Hindu nationalists, so they certainly don't all agree. A lot of it, I think it's just kind of pie in the sky. But one thing that there's been a pivot, rhetorically at least, to not talk about a Hindu nation or a Hindu world, but it's to talk about a Bharat Mahasangh, so basically a kind of sympathetic to Indian culture group of nations, like a federation, which is a much more kind of soft power tweaking of things. But one of them is to build up, basically claim Siam Rip as a Hindu dham, as a center of religious kind of power. So in India there are the Char Dham, and so this would be the Pancha Dham, the fifth one. So it's part of this soft power expanding the idea of Bharat Mata, which is this anthropomorphic, unbroken idea of India before East and West Pakistan were, annexed. And so it plays into all that, this trans-Asian Buddhist circuit. There are a lot of talk about India and soft power. So this is how I kind of understand yoga and Sanskrit as soft power instruments. And it's all about kind of reclaiming the glorious golden age past of India. All of these sorts of appeals to purity and tradition and authority, mystery. So Sanskrit comes in. So, I mean, if you go on any kind of like yoga studio website, you'll probably find some page that has something to do with Sanskrit. And it's basically the yoga studio or the yoga business's idea of generating some authenticity or legitimacy. We know a bit about Sanskrit. If you can't read this top line, Sanskrit is confirmed to be the oldest language known to man. According to Discover Yoga Online, all other languages started from evolving from you. Okay, it's not. It is said to be the very origin of language itself. So this is a very common factoid which is repeated ad nauseum, and there are countless of them. So what I started doing, I started noticing a few years ago that these people are saying this. Oh, and these people are also saying this. And then, so I have this kind of list of all these things that people either say the same, that they refer to the same, not just the same text, but the same verses. And also have a kind of very similar eco-friendly dharmic ecology, utopian aspiration. If everyone just did yoga, if everyone just had a yogic lifestyle, then the world would be a better place. And it's like, okay, well, what does that consist of? So I'll talk about that. I'll give you some example. But even the Ministry of External Affairs, if you go to their website, they have the section History and Development of Yoga. And it basically says something like, several thousand years ago, Adi Shiva met the Sapta Rishis, gave them the knowledge of yoga, and then they spread it out across the world. So the official history and development of yoga and the very first layer of humanity is supposedly a out of India Vedic speaking Aryan civilization. So you find that not only in like the outliers of Hindu supremacist websites and chat rooms, but you find it at the center of the Indian government idea of themselves. So this is a curious thing. And then, of course, you also then find your susceptible, naive, earnest yoga person who's looking for more meaning and sense of this, dizzying history that is India's amazing history, who just consume this stuff as well, quite uncritically. So that gets quite interesting. So you have this yoga way of life. This is just one example of countless. Yoga is a way of life. It's this kind of rhetorical sidestep to kind of not talk about Hinduism or yoga as a religion, and that it's more encompassing and just doing physical postures, going to power yoga or Bikram or something is not enough. You should be having more comprehensive way of life. So this is one place. It's Govardhan Eco Village. It's essentially owned by ISKCON in America. And Radhanath Swami, he's the charismatic authority figure there. This place has won some global tourism awards. It's about as eco-sustainable as a community, as an intentional community could get. And so Jivan Mukti Yoga, they have a very intimate relationship. They're always doing their yoga teacher training courses there. So this is an example of what this Vedic way of life would be like in a sense. And we're told that Vedic lifestyle can cure many ailments. And not only that, at the World Sanskrit Conference in Bangkok, so Sushma Swaraj, the Minister of External Affairs, got up and said, which she said many times, that yoga, Sanskrit, will purify the air, the rivers, create world peace, stop world hunger, tuberculosis, all these things. These are bold claims, no doubt. So you get to stuff like this, the 11th Commandment by Stephen Knapp, who's been involved with ISKCON and with the Hare Krishnas, and also he's part of the Vedic Friends Association, which is this organization that promote a kind of Vedic way of life. So what does a Vedic culture consist of? Well, yoga, meditation, astrology, Ayurveda, gemology, Vastu, which is kind of like feng shui, environmental awareness, vegetarianism, social cooperation, the means for global peace, and much more. So it kind of gives you a rough list. This gives you a kind of better idea. This guy is the head of Samskrita Bharati, which is a linguistic organization. Their primary goal is to revitalize spoken Sanskrit, to create not just the lingua franca of India, but the entire world. This is a very big aspiration. So this is a couple of minutes that I added subtitles to of his talk. It was in San Francisco a couple of years ago, where he talks about yoga and Sanskrit.
परिवर्तनं न आगच्छति तत्त्वानां जीवने आचरणेन परिवर्तनम् आगच्छति महान् विचारः अस्ति इति कारणेन जनाः न स्वीकुर्वन्ति विचारस्य पृष्ठतः शक्तिः अपेक्षिता शक्तिं विना विचारस्य मान्यता न भवति तर्हि संस्कृतस्य तत्त्वानाम् आचरणेन अपि च तेषां विचाराणां प्रचाराय शक्ति निर्माणेन केवलं वयम् अग्रे गन्तुं शक्नुमः तदर्थम् अस्माकं मम निवेदनं यत् वयं सर्वे मिलित्वा संस्कृतभाषा माध्यमेन पुनः अध्ययनं कुर्मः एकमेव अंशं वदामि भगवद्गीतायाः भाषा संस्कृतं परन्तु जनाः संस्कृतं न जानन्ति इति अनुवादं पठितवन्तः संस्कृतं न जनाः अद्यापि गीतां न पठन्ति गीतायाः अनुवादं पठन्ति कारणं गीतायाः भाषां न जानन्ति योगः आवश्यकः सर्वेपि योगस्य अनुसरणं कर्तुं प्रयत्नं कुर्वन्ति परन्तु योगस्य भाषा मास्तु वेदान्तम् आवश्यकम् अन्यभाषायां वेदान्तं पठन्ति संस्कृतं न आवश्यकम् आयुर्वेदस्य भाषा संस्कृतं ज्योतिषस्य भाषा संस्कृतं प्राचीन भारतीय गणितस्य भाषा संस्कृतं भरतनाट्यस्य भरतमुनेः नाट्यशास्त्रस्य भाषा संस्कृतं जीवनस्य यत्किमपि क्षेत्रं स्वीकरोतु तस्य क्षेत्रस्य भाषा संस्कृतभाषा अस्ति तर्हि अस्माभिः पुनरपि योगमाध्यमेन संस्कृतमाध्यमेन योगः पठनीयः संस्कृतमाध्यमेन वेदान्तं पठनीयं संस्कृतमाध्यमेन नाट्यशास्त्रं पठनीयं संस्कृतमाध्यमेन अर्थशास्त्रं पठनीयं संस्कृतमाध्यमेन इतिहासः पठनीयः यदि एवं प्रकारेण वयं मूलज्ञानं संस्कृतमाध्यमेन प्राप्नुमः तदर्थं वयं संस्कृतं पठामः संस्कृतं पठित्वा एतान् ग्रन्थान् सर्वान् पठामः तर्हि पुनरपि एषा भारतीय ज्ञानपरम्परा अमेरिका देशे अपि सार्वत्रिकरूपेण जनैः स्वीकृता भवेत् इदानीं विश्वे यानि परिवर्तनानि जायमानानि सन्ति एतदाधारेण एकं विचारं वदामि किमर्थं संस्कृतम् इति यदि भवतां बालाः पृच्छन्ति चेत् by 2050 विश्वस्य धर्मः हिंदू धर्मः भवति यः धर्मः संस्कृत भाषया प्रतिपादितः धर्मशासित समाज व्यवस्था पुनः विश्वे सर्वत्र धर्म सिविलाइजेशन पुनः आगच्छति विश्वे सर्वैः स्वीकृता भवति तस्य दिनस्य कृते सज्जतायाः आरम्भं करोतु 2025 अनन्तरं तस्य आरम्भः भवति नवकालखण्डस्य आरम्भः भविष्यति यत्र संस्कृत प्रतिपादित भारतीय ज्ञान परंपरायाः पुनरुत्थानस्य प्रारम्भः भवति तस्मिन् काले यस्य आधुनिक ज्ञानं प्राचीन ज्ञानं द्वयोः संगमः अस्ति सः नेतृत्वं स्वीकरोति समाज जीवनस्य राष्ट्र जीवनस्य विश्वस्य संस्कृत भारती यूएसए इत्यस्य लक्ष्यं किम् इति पृच्छति चेत्
Right. So I'm going to segue just quickly and talk about my other kind of main project, which they work together. I call it Imagining Sanskrit Land, and I'm quite curious about people who claim to speak Sanskrit. And these are some of the places rumoured where everyone speaks Sanskrit. Isn't it amazing? I've only been to a couple of them, and I've got a film series on YouTube called Imagining Sanskrit Land. I've got 4 episodes. This is just a short clip of the 5th episode I hope to one day finish.
ट्रैक्टर मध्ये उपविश्य चलती वा
इसका फोटो चला
चलतु चलामः
एक इधर भी ले लो
किंचित किंचित तत्र भवतु ताड्यति एषा ताड्यति
मारती है बेस
Maisa. Namo namo.
बहुन्मत्ता अस्ति सा अस्तु चलतु इदानीं
So some people speak Sanskrit in this village in Madhya Pradesh, but not everyone. I've got a few papers that I've written about this place. I've also been crunching the Sanskrit data from the Indian census. This is how many people apparently speak Sanskrit today, or at least identify as L1 or mother tongue speakers. So it's grown. But it's curious, the figures for second and third language speakers of Sanskrit they've both declined. I won't overwhelm you with numbers, but this is the total number of people who speak Hindi as a first language. And then out of them, people identify as English speakers. And then 3.5 million people out of 422 million say that they're third language speakers of Sanskrit, right? Now, if you look at the totals, so 25,000, then 1.2 million second language, and then 4 million. So out of 3.5 million out of the 4 million speak Hindi and English. And if you go through and look at all these other language kind of permutations, basically anyone who identifies as a Sanskrit L1 to L3 speaker, either side of that, they speak English and Hindi. Or maybe it's Marathi and English, depending on the state. So this is kind of interesting stuff. And what I've been doing is going down to the state, down to each state, and then to each division, and then each, in Maharashtra they call it Tahelka, or the districts, and then within each district you have a Tahelka. So what I've been able to do is actually find out where people that identify as Sanskrit speakers are. So in this part of the project, there's no... I'm not interested in if people can speak Sanskrit. I'm interested in if they identify as Sanskrit speakers. Right? So what do we find? We find that basically they all live in like these hyper-urban areas of the cities. So they speak English and they live in the cities. So this idea of like a Sanskrit village is really kind of myth-busted in a sense, I'm sorry to say. And that's why we have a random picture of a penguin. No, a pigeon, sorry. All right. So deep post-colonizing neoliberal yoga-topias. Basically, the gist of this, I wrote this kind of blog thing on Medium. I use it as a place just to get ideas out of my head. And, I realized is that you've got these colonially constructed narratives which are then recycled in a kind of post-colonial context. And these narratives are being used to decolonize yoga. Right, so that's what I kind of mean by deep post-colonizing the narratives of Yogaland. Can I give you examples? The examples I've already shown you. This idea that Sanskrit's the oldest language in the world. I mean, this was at some point very much an Orientalist kind of idea, but linguists have put it aside. The only people that haven't put it aside are basically yoga fundamentalists. Sanskrit has to be the oldest language in the world. It just has to be. What's this?
For me, what is so powerful is that yoga is available to everyone. India helps people experience yoga, whether they have any practice or not. Throw out your plan and live. Just moment by moment, see what happens. And see the magic of what happens by dancing with the river of life. The first time I came to India, that was very dissettling. And now I think I come back to India to be in that unknown, because there's a lot of magic in the unpredictable. The body of India is the body of Shakti, of the Great Mother. The Ganga is the blood that flows through the land, and so people return to the river as their very life force. Yoga is being able to express the power of being alive, to be able to be immersed in the water, and when you rise, to be transformed by that.
The incredible India ads are all quite interesting. I'll show you another one quickly. This is a paper I recently got published. You can check it out if you want, but it's kind of the backbone of what I'm talking about today. So I like really long titles for some reason. So here's another ad.
Racing has taken me all over the world. But when I put on the helmet, I am still in India. India, where I found yoga and the champion inside me.
If your mind is racing, how can you? Slow down. Breathe.
I have breathed in India's magic. I have felt its warmth.
Don't run after success. Meditate for it.
There is ancient wisdom in the air. All one has to do is breathe. I have breathed out the noise, the Himalayas, the Ganges. I have breathed in their calm. Yoga has taught me the truth about life and motorcycles. That the more still you are, the further you can go.
Incredible India.
Just makes you want to try yoga, ride a motorbike, do something with your life.
Can you do that move on a motorcycle?
I've never tried. No. But did you, both these ads, you heard words like transform, power, magic, all this stuff. And so you end up, I mean, if you go to Yoga Journal, which has a huge readership, I mean, they have millions of subscribers. It's really influential. They have a media pack that they release, and it has all their statistics, at least, that they provide to justify charging as much as they do for advertising. But you find things, you know, like just all across the interweb of, you know, bringing power into your daily life with mantras or yantras or yoga in general. Become a super yogi in your life. 4 unknown superpowers you get from doing yoga. I mean, this fits into very much a Nietzschean idea of the Übermensch. It's really interesting to kind of think about, you know, the ideas of how you can find power in nature. So this in Japan, an example is Shigendo, which is these mountain ascetics. You know, we've all seen that image of the monks under the waterfall, you know, purifying themselves. This is Shigendo. And so that maps quite well into all these different things you can do with yoga, which actually might not have anything to do with yoga. They just say it's like yoga, but something else. So yeah, this healing power of yoga in nature is really important. And this fits in with the neo-romantic type of sentiment that really runs through the whole marketing logic of Yogaland. And there are other places which we've seen this. I mean, the Nazis really, they were neo-romantics, right, basically. They had a fondness for yoga and taught SS guards to basically meditate, to deal with the stress. Had castles up in Bavaria where they liked to stretch together. So I'm not using this logical fallacy that, you know, if you do yoga, you're a Nazi. Like I mean, that's just ridiculous. But that's what some people like to create a straw man of what I'm trying to say. But I mean, just these images alone are quite striking in their similarity. And, you know, this kind of bodily fascistic ideas that the state uses to create reverence for the metaphysical nation state is quite a curious thing. And also in Japan, it has an interesting history of mobilizing women to do group fitness together. So there's this really curious history of, I'm trying to understand yoga in that way. Because in Japan, you have with the participation rate, it's even more gendered. It's like 99, 100% women in yoga classes. So I'm guessing in Canada it's maybe 80, 85%. I don't know, I haven't been to a yoga class. That seems to generally be what it is. So yeah, there's an International Day of Yoga is a really curious thing as a political project to embolden the Indian state. And I'll show you a really interesting example. So this is Chidananda Swami from Paramat Niketan in Rishikesh. He has had this International Yoga Festival. It's just happened a couple of weeks ago on the banks of the Ganga. And a couple of years ago, Narendra Modi gave basically a little talk. So I invite you at least to listen to the way that Chidananda Swami introduces Modi. So,
Honorable Shankaracharya ji and all the revered Yogacharyas, scientists, professors, distinguished guests, all the yogis almost from 100 nations. My dear sisters and brothers, welcome home, welcome all. My dear friends, today I am going to share one story with you, a story of a man who came in his early age to Himalayas to immerse himself in the yoga and the sadhana. But there is a divine plan and there is a divine design. Instead of being a monk, he became the Prime Minister of India. However, he never stopped being a yogi, and instead of being a monk, he became a yogi Prime Minister of India. Let us welcome him all. And I have a special a garland, which is very fragrant, a garland made by all cardamoms. Let us offer all together. Raise your hands from there to our Honorable Prime Minister of India. Thank you, Honorable Shri Modi ji. He is the man of action. He is the man of perfection. He has a vision, he has a mission, and he has a wisdom not only for this nation, but the entire world. Let us honor our Prime Minister of Divine Prime Minister of India. Thank you, Yogi ji, Prime Minister of India.
It kind of makes my hair on the back of my neck crawl watching that. I mean, does anyone know about what happened in Gujarat in 2002? I mean, there's a few, well, they say a couple of thousand people at least were slaughtered while he was the chief minister of that state of Gujarat. So, yeah. Well, I really want to wrap this up so we can have a chat, but there's so much more I want to talk about, so maybe I won't. Yeah, there's just so many different ways in which yoga people can become, including this really cool song. This is Hindu Jagega, Vishwa Jagega. So when the Hindu nation is created, the world will also roll on. And so, yeah, you get these ideas of dharma that you end up, I mean, this woman, I've written to her, she never wrote back. I just wanted to ask her some basic questions. She does pilgrimage tours to India. You can go hang out with Amma. She likes to also say victory to Bharat Mata. Seems completely oblivious to the inherent problems that this can have. There's a whole world view that I will run out of time, but I just want to finish on this. So this is Deen Dayal Upadhyaya, who was one of the Hindutva ideologues. So in terms of consuming religion, in terms of rebranding Hindu supremacism, what you end up with is that the original ideologues, so Golvaka, Sarvaka, Hedgva, these guys, everyone knows that they're Hindutva, they're Hindu supremacists. So what they've done is they've pivoted and are promoting Deen Dayal Upadhyaya's integral humanism as the preferred kind of rebranding of Hindu nationalism, because people don't know him. Integral Hinduism comes across as it's green, it's eco-friendly, kind of then maps onto like neo-paganism and these eco-theologies in general. So you end up, this is the pledge for last year's Day of Yoga, and by the end, like closer to 8 million people pledged to make yoga an integral part of my daily life. Maybe it's my tin hat that I like to wear sometimes, but this integral to me is very clearly a cipher for integral humanism, which is a way of inculcating people to tacitly lend their support. I don't know where these 8 million people live. I don't know anything about them. I wrote to the Ministry of External Affairs and did not get an answer back. So, yeah, I play around with this idea of Hindustan and Yogistan because if you look more broadly at the theology, the utopian aspects of that, what global yoga and Hindu supremacism are doing, there's some really very subtle associations and someone who works on this, I cop a lot of flack from both sides. So I have, like Hindu supremacists who, threaten my life and want to throw me in wells, and then basically I'm a white neo-colonialist guy that should sit back and stop trying to silence the voices of women of colour. I mean, this full spectrum of people telling me that I shouldn't say what I want to say, mostly because it's deemed as heretical, pointing out that Sanskrit isn't the oldest language in the world. Something as banal as that could get you, has got me doxxed, has had me threatened with being sent to the Human Rights Commission for offending Hindus. Which I was just saying before, I had a paper unpublished last week for a few discrepancies against Hindus. I don't know what I did wrong, actually. So it was published in December and then unpublished this last week. It's now on my academia page under the unpublished papers section. You can still find a copy of it. Anyway, that's it. So hopefully that was coherent in some way. But
thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the presentation. Stay tuned for more episodes. In the meantime, please have a look at the Yogascapes in Japan website at yogascapesinjapan.com. And also, if you're feeling generous, please think about making a donation through the GoFundMe account linked to the website. Until next time.